So you've done all these great sketch details and so on over the course of the semester, but I just want to talk about how you put it into Revit, because it's not 3D work. It can be 3D work, but you can also do it very quickly in 2D, because often if you were to do a detail like this with all the elements in it in 3D, it would take far too long. It wouldn't be worth your while. So there's a shortcut to it. The other thing is that the Revit model is it's mostly about quantifying the number of materials, the type of materials, how much there is, so you can send it out and to another program, or in Revit you can also do it as well and calculate how much it's going to cost and how it's going to be built and so on. There's always a percentage level of error in those cost calculations, and they're never correct, to be honest with you. But the percentage level of error is such that it doesn't matter that the Revit model is slightly wrong when it comes down to the very, very close level of detail. The cost is always going to be the same because they're based on generalizations and floor areas and so on. So what I'm going to talk about today is making a good cross section through the building, and then making a key junction detail like this, and just to start going on how the basis of it works. So I'm going to give you a lecture about it, and then I think I have it tomorrow morning as well, don't I? Yeah. So then we can just get you working on it and I'll answer any questions you have and so on. I think I won't give you any more formal lectures this semester. It's just going to be working on any questions you have. If you want me to repeat stuff, or if you want me to do anything specific, then I'll do that. I'll do that for you. But no more lectures. Just work. Okay. So the first thing is I'm going to go into the ground floor plan of this house here, and I'm going to make a new cross section. So I can either go into the View tab and take a section, or there's also a shortcut up here in the shortcut bar. I can say section, and we'll just take a section through here, just facing up this way. Okay, and that's called section 1. So this is kind of what it looks like. So you can see over here the various layers of the roof have been set in, but and the various layers of the walls and all that stuff have been set in, but not in any great detail. And also this drawing automatically comes out at 1:100, which if it was printed out would probably be around about that high on a piece of paper. So Revit is telling us how thick the lines will print out, if you print it out to scale. We have the option of switching those thick lines off up here, so we can see all the lines and all the layers in them automatically, and that's probably the easiest way to start dealing with a detailed drawing. I would say that the first thing we do, if we just switch them back on again for a second, we could change this. We can change this drawing to a 1:50 drawing, because 1:50 is when you start to get into technical details, or historically at least. In Revit you can probably do it at any scale, but if you want to print it out, if you print out anything smaller than 1:50, you can't really see anything except the overall layers and so on. So let's say we had this as a 1:50 drawing. What we can do is we can take a call out of this. If we wanted to concentrate, for example, on this side of the house, we can make a call out, and the way to do that is just to come up here to the View tab and press this button called Call Out. You have two options in here. You can either make a rectangular one, or you can make a whatever shape one you want. This is a new option, but a rectangular one is fine for the moment. So I'm going to press Rectangle Call Out, and then I'm just going to draw a rectangle around the area that I want to deal with in detail, like that. And you can see that over here on the left it's made a new drawing called Section 1 Callout. So what we have here is a callout box. It has a text associated with it. And what this little text thing is, you can grab it here and you can drag it around until it looks graphically better on your 1:50 thing, or you can actually break it, so you can change it like that. these little dashes here, these will actually turn into the drawing numbers of the sheet that you put the call out on. Okay, so that's one of the powerful things about Revit is if we have a sectional drawing here called section 1 and we make a call out of it, the number of the call out will be printed on the sectional drawing as soon as we give it a sheet. So let's just try that and see if it works. I hope it works now. I've said it works, but you never know. So let's go into Fronter. And I'm just going to log in here. And we'll go into the first semester where I put all those title blocks. And GIT. And title blocks. And we're going to download this this A3 title block here. It doesn't matter which one you download. I'm just using this A3 one because it's there. So once it's downloaded, I can click it, and it'll open up in Revit. And there's the title block that I gave you all. And now I can load it into the project. And Revit just tells me it can't create this kind of element in this view. That's fine because it's made for a sheet view. So I'm going to give it a, let's just close down these families. I'm going to make a new sheet. So here's the Sheets tab down here in the project browser. So at the moment there's only the splash screen in there, which is the screen you see when you open up Revit. I'm going to right click on Sheets and just going to say New Sheet. And you can see at the top here we have this A3 metric that I just inserted. There we go. And press OK. And so now we have a sheet in the project. So let's just call this sheet, I'll call it section. And I'm going to give the drawing number, what do we give it? We'll give it an overall drawing number. So I'm going to make it under the SFB code 99. And it's going to be 3. And it's going to be 001. Okay, everybody know the SFB code? Off by heart? No. So now we've got a sheet. So I can go up to the new callout that I've made, section 1 callout, and I can grab it and bring it into the sheet here. Like that. That's far too big for the sheet at 1 to 20, so let's change it over here to 1 to 50. Like that. Title of it is down here, section 1 callout. But now if I go back into the initial section, you can see that the sheet name has appeared on the callout box. So that means that you don't have to keep track of where all your separate details are going. Revit should keep track of that stuff for you, as long as you're using a kind of a proper linked system, and it should do it. It's more difficult not to do it than it is to do it. So I can then go in, and I'm just going to show. Sometimes you might get this. This happens when you're looking at your project browser, as some of the views disappear when you put them on a sheet. That just has to do with the organization of the browser. So at the top here, you can change the organization of the browser, and you can just change it to all, which means that everything will appear on the side here. So you can see it pops back in again. So it seems to automatically at the moment take sheets that you've inserted, drawings you've inserted onto a sheet away from the project browser. But I don't find that useful, so I always change it back to all again. So it should have a sheet that looks like that, something. And the callout, section 1 callout, or the section will have the name of the sheet attached to it. Everybody understand that? Do you want me to pause that and give you a hand?
How do you need to make a name?
Wait a second, I'll just pause it. We'll video this again. So all that is doing is that when you get a large scale section in a set of plans, and you can see that somebody has made a more detailed section here where they're going to talk about the construction of it, and they've also told you what number of sheets you need to look at. So it's just a way of keeping track of where everything is in the project. And it's actually one of the most useful things in Revit, aside from everything else. So, if we look at the sheet again, this is actually quite a small. This is quite a small section for what I want to do. I actually want to make a 1 to 20 section in here, just because it gives you more. No, I tell you what. Let's leave it like that for the moment. Let's leave it at 1 to 50. Okay. So I'm going to work on the call out now. So I'm going to go into the call out. And everything we've done so far in Revit has been in 3D, but now we're getting to the point where it doesn't make any sense to continue with 3D, because it would just take too much time to 3D model all the timber and screws and mortar joints and everything in a project. It wouldn't add any value to the project. So we start to use symbolic representations, just like if anybody's used to using AutoCAD or anything like that, or even drawing by hand. We're getting into something along the same lines now. The entire thing we need to think about pretty much from now on, if we're dealing with detailed drawings, is this annotate tab at the top here. This has got everything we need in it. And pretty much these 6 buttons are just about 95% of what we need to use. Okay. So I'm going to start here, number 1, with insulation. Insulation is so important in a construction project that they give it a button of its own. But what it is really, it's just a repeating a detail. Insulation is one of those things where it's got a nice, if you can see on the little graphic there, it's got a nice, I'll move it away now. It's got a nice little graphic on the wall which shows soft insulation. That little kind of curved pattern denotes soft insulation. It would be nice if they just drew that in 3D for us, but apparently they can't. Apparently it's one of the most complex things they could possibly do. So you never get an insulation pattern automatically drawn into a wall. So you need to draw it in ourselves. So I'm going to press insulation, and as soon as I press it, you get an option to change the width of the insulation here. So you can basically change the width of it to whatever you have in your project or whatever you've set up in your wall. And then you effectively just draw, just like drawing a line where you want the insulation to be, like that. And if you've drawn it slightly wrong, you can always select it afterwards and use the arrow keys just to shunt it into place. And then you should have something that looks like that very quickly. Is that working for everybody? Simple enough. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to draw it along the roof. I'm going to draw it from here, and I'm going to draw it all the way to the top of the roof, like that. And my mouse is starting to be on the way out, so it's not working so well. And what usually happens is that insulation is extremely important, as Alan has probably told you, but it's also important how you represent it on the screen here, because people read these drawings. People are used to reading drawings. They really take a lot of information from these drawings. So if I left that like that, it would probably be built like that, and it would be built with an enormous co-bridge between the inside and the outside. Okay, so you can't just say, okay, Revit only lets us draw a straight line, therefore I'm just going to draw my insulation like that, because it just, to anybody who's used to looking at drawings, it looks unprofessional and unfinished, and it's kind of leaving room for error. So what I generally advise people to do is to actually individually draw in the little curves afterwards to join the two of them together. And you do that by using these detail lines. And detail lines are just what they say, they're just lines. So I'm going to choose a detail line here, and you get an option to choose different types of lines. So you can choose dashed lines or dotted lines or red lines or blue lines, or different thicknesses of lines. But all the details in Revit are generally drawn under thin lines. So I'm going to choose thin lines, and then I'm going to use this spline tool, and I'm just going to very quickly, because I'm going to change it afterwards, draw a kind of a curve around. It doesn't have to be too accurate. I know it looks terrible, but we'll fix it in a minute. Until we get something that looks like it's joining together. I'm going to switch the thickness off again so we can see it a bit more detail. Let's just move that to the end of there. And once we've done that, we can improve it a little bit. We can just do a little bit of kind of aesthetic editing. And this actually does matter, because the better your drawings look, the more confidence people tend to have in what you're doing. So if you tend to produce drawings that look unprofessional and unfinished, you're actually dealing with a trust issue with your client. So sometimes this stuff, even though it seems just a little bit aesthetic, is actually quite important. So just twist it around until you get something that looks like it could be kind of nice. All right. Maybe you could do a little bit better than that, but you should end up with something like that, where the two layers of insulation join together. So that's telling somebody who's up there building it that actually this has to connect up. There's no room for cold bridges in here. Okay. And sometimes simple graphical tricks like that are they're just what people expect to see. So if it's not there, they start to lose confidence in what you're saying often, if you're not producing decent drawings. So then if we switch the thick lines back on again, it should look like something like that in a 1:50 drawing. Is everybody okay with that? Say something. Okay. So we have the insulation drawn in here, but we still have these walls that are cut according to the computer model rather than according to the logic of construction. If there's any carpenters in here, they probably wouldn't recommend that you build a roof like that sitting on top of a sloped piece of concrete, but pretty much anybody can make that judgment, I reckon. So what we need to do is place a detail over these elements here to make sure that they are believable construction details. The other thing we have here is, because these Revit roofs are made with all the layers all the way through, it's actually taking the layers of plasterboard externally outside the house, which would never happen in reality. But this is one of those things that you don't change in the model, you change in 2D, because it doesn't make any difference to the calculation of the costs in reality. So what we would do here is we actually use something called a region, a masking region, which is just a shape that covers up whatever's behind. And you use this just to put a little bit more quality into your construction drawings. So it's exactly the same as everything else in Revit. You just get some shapes that you can make, and I'll just show you by doing, actually. So masking region. I'm going to make a masking region from here, and we'll bring it down to here, and let's just take it across here and bring it up again to here. If I just accept that, you can see that we've just drawn something that covers up whatever's behind, but it still looks like that. So we also have the option to change the quality of the lines that surround the masking region. So if I select it again, I edit it, I can select this line here, for example, and I can change it from a thin line to an invisible line, and accept it again. And now it kind of starts to look as if it's more realistic. I could probably extend this down a little bit so it's taking a bit more of that line away, and we can worry about that stuff later. So let's just switch off the thick lines again. So now it actually does seem like that we've got two layers of plasterboard in here. We've got a gap for some battens, and then we've got some rafters coming through here. And since we've taken away the chipboard, or sorry, not the chipboard, the plasterboard from outside, it looks to me as if the rafters are just continuing through to the outside. Does everyone kind of see that? Yeah. So now, in order to keep the line of the rafters together, I'm just going to draw a hidden line between here and here, just so we can see it dashed behind the level of the layer of insulation there. So I'm going to use detail line again. And pretty much you can draw all your details just by using lines if you want to, but there are several shortcuts in here. This time, instead of using thin lines, I'm going to use hidden lines. And I'm just going to take a line from here and just bring it over to here. And you can see it's put a line in there as a dashed line. It doesn't make much difference at 1 to 50, but if I change it to 1 to 10, for example, you can see that the dash becomes more readable, and you know, it actually becomes part of the information of the scheme itself. Okay. So again, everything we're doing is just purely in this view. It's view specific. It doesn't have any effect on the 3D model at all. If I go and make a cross section through another part of the building, none of this information will turn up. I'll have to go through and do this work again. Okay. Or copy paste it, which is also a possibility. Okay, so we've talked about insulation, and we've talked about detail lines, and we've talked about regions. Well, we've talked about masking regions anyway. So I think what I'm going to do next is, I won't get into the managers. Yeah, okay, I'll talk about components. So this is the real time saver of detailing things in Revit, is that as you, if my mouse will stay still, as you go through and get better at Revit, you can actually build up a library of your own components, a library of detail components. For example, you can make a standard brick, or you can make a standard Lego block like they're doing here. And you can just put them in a folder, and you can use them again every time you need to do the same detail again. So it becomes very, very fast to make a construction drawing, because all your components are already set up and ready to go. So if I wanted to, for example, what will we put in first? So we put in some roof tiles. I can go into component, and if we don't have roof tiles in the project, let me just do that again. Now I tell you what I'll do. Rather than doing roof tiles first, I'll do some timber. So we go into component, and we can go down here, and all the details that we have in the project are set up here. Why is that talking like that? Let me just do that again. Component, detail component. Yeah, timber, there we go. So I have a timber piece already set up in my project here, but you probably don't. And if you don't have one, the quick way to get it is to just go to load family. And under all the families in here, we also have a folder called detail components. And there's a few details in here, like for example, they have the basic stuff, wood and plastic, you know, some tiles, some doors and windows and so on. If you go into wood and plastic, we have rough carpentry, and we have just a standard timber cross section through a timber beam. If I open that, you actually get real construction sizes. So somebody has set up this family with parameter types that relate to the Danish building industry. So I can go down and choose, for example, what will I choose? 50 by 75 cross section, and press OK, and it'll come in here, and then I can just place it where I think we need a roof plate in this house, like that. And you can see it comes in with a what do they call, a masking region already embedded in the detail, so it covers up what's behind it. Sometimes they don't have masking regions embedded, and you have to put them in yourself, but the clever ones have these masking regions, so it just looks like it's been drawn correctly. Okay, everybody with me? Okay. The next thing we can do just to finish this detail is the concrete is going up at this angle, which isn't realistic. The concrete would most likely stop around about here, and you would put a, you would just strap the wall plate to it. So there is a little trick in Revit under the View tab. If you go into the View tab, you have this Cut Profile button here. I don't know why it's in the View tab and it's not in the Annotation tab. It doesn't make any sense, but there's a few things in Revit that don't make any sense. But just like the little video is showing us there, you can actually reshape the view, the shape of your 3D model, just for the purposes of this view. Okay, so if I press cut profile here, it's asking me to select the element I want to cut, so I'm going to select this. And then I can just draw a line as to where I want to cut the profile from here. And we have a little arrow here which is pointing towards the direction. It's asking us which side do you want to keep. Do you want to keep the bottom side or the top side? And you can just click that to decide which side you want to keep, up or down. So I've decided to keep the bottom side. If I accept that, it's cut out the rest of the concrete above the level there. Everybody got that? Kind of. Will I pause that for a second? Okay, so that's a detail component, and there are many detail components. You can just download a lot of them from Autodesk as well. So for example, if we wanted to put in a wall tie to tie the bricks back, there are several of them. We can either draw it ourselves using a region, masking region or a filled region, or much smarter would be if we downloaded one and put it in a folder so that we had it to use it at a later date. So let's say I want to download a wall tie, just for the sake of argument. Am I recording this? Yes, I am. Good. So I go back into annotation. I go into component, detail component, and I can go to, actually no, what I want to do, sorry, I'm doing this backwards. I want to go to insert, go to Autodesk Seek, and I'm just going to type in wall tie, like this. And most of the stuff on Autodesk Seek is 3D, but a lot of it, there's also a lot of detail stuff like this. And there's several different wall ties in here. And this fishtail tie is probably what we want. So let's just try that. Fishtail tie. So I'm just going to click on the icon here, click on Revit 2011, which is the latest version of it, and then I'm just going to download it. There it is, fishtail tie. Now I can open it up, and there it is there in the family editor in Revit. And it has some options. We can switch the direction of it and so on once it gets into Revit. But this is just a 2D drawing. It's not a 3D thing at all, so I can't look around it. So if I load this into the project, it's asked me which one I want to load it into. I just want it into the project. Okay. I go back to what we were working on, this one here. And if I go to annotate now and go to insert component, detail component, it's here ready to be used. Okay. So you can use the space bar to rotate it to the direction you want, and let's just put it here. And you can see that it actually it covers up the insulation behind because it's got a region, a masking region included in it. It's too short, but we can change that just by selecting it, editing it, and we'll just make it, I don't know, 240 long. So it looks like it could be fairly realistic wall tie. But over here we still have this hatch pattern for the bricks. So because we're working in this much detail now, we need to put some bricks in there. Okay. And this is the first opportunity for using not just a component, but a repeating detail component. And this is one of those really useful things again. So I'm going to say repeating detail component. And you should have a brick component automatically set up in Revit if you're using the Dan.edu. And I can just select where we want to start that, and we can just draw as many bricks as we want to the right dimension, all the way up as high as we want to go. So now we've got a wall with an external brick face on it. Okay. So now we should maybe probably go in and adjust the wall tie based on where it should be through the joints and so on. That makes sense? Will I do it again?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Pause it. Yes. All right. Okay. Now, just to keep this going with the repeating component, just to see what you can do with it and how it's a time saver once you get the hang of it. Of course, it's not a time saver when you start. It's a pain in the ass like everything is in Revit. But when you get the hang of it, it actually is a time saver. I promise. Because we've already inserted a cross section of timber here, we can use this as the basis for our timber battens that are holding up the plasterboard here. There must be timber battens holding this up in here. So I'm just going to copy this. So I'm going to select this one and copy it over. By the way, I'm using, whenever I use this, I'm using all these tabs up here to copy and move and rotate. I'm only doing that because it's easy to see on the screen. There are shortcuts for all this stuff as well. Keyboard shortcuts. So you can bind a keyboard shortcut to copy or to rotate or to all this stuff as well. You don't have to do it by pressing the buttons. The fastest way of using Revit is to have keyboard shortcuts with your left hand while you're working with your right hand. Okay. Anyway, back to this. So now we have this timber 50 by 75 that we inserted into the project. I want to make that into a standard batten size. So I'm going to make it 35 high by 50 millimeters long. Okay. So I just select the one that's there. I'm going to edit it and I'm going to duplicate it. If I don't duplicate it and I edit it, I'm going to change all of them. But I only want to change this one here. So I'm going to change this to 35 by 50. And I'm going to call this 3 just because I've already done this before. That's okay. And then here I can change the height of it to 35 and I'm going to change the width of it to 50. Okay. So you can see I've just made a smaller version of this one over here. And that's fine. We can use that. So I can either use this as a single component. I can take it and I can just use the align tool, AL shortcut, to align it to this line up here, like that. Don't know why it aligns it down there, but anyway. And we can just move it into position. So that's one way of doing it. Or I can make another repeating detail, so I can just draw a line of them in without having to worry about it anymore.
Can you repeat that?
What do you want me to repeat? So the other thing we can do to make our lives easier is we can make that into a repeating detail. So go back up to Annotate again, and I'm going to go to Components, Repeating Detail Component, and the one they have set up here is automatically brick, so I want to make a new one. So as always in Revit, we edit the one we have and then we duplicate it and give it a new name. So I'm going to call it Roof Battens. Let's do that with the right. Roof Battens. Okay. And here we have the option to change the component. It's set to brick now, but we can change it to what we just made. What do we call it? It's 35 by 50 number 3. Is there? We can change the layout of it to a fixed distance or a fixed number or a maximum spacing. You can figure that out for yourself what you want to do, but it usually in the case of a structural element, it's a fixed distance because you always want it to be the same distance apart. And I'm going to change the spacing from the brick dimension spacing to 400 millimeters. And this is the nice one. You can rotate the detail within the line that you're drawing, but you never know which angle it's been rotated at until you try it first. So I'm going to leave it at none to start off with. I'm going to press OK. And now Revit is saying click to enter line start point. So let's enter here. Let's see what happens. And if I start to draw it, you can see it's repeating it, but it's all at the wrong rotation. But we can draw it all the way up to the top, like that. Oh, that gets quite nicely, but anyway, never mind. So it's drawn in. I need a new mouse. It's drawn in all those for us. But because it's rotated wrongly, we just have to go back in, select it again, edit the type. I'm going to change the detail rotation to 90 clockwise and see what that does. And that seems to put it in place nicely for us. So I press OK. And then I can delete this component here. Does that make sense? Yeah, Now, just to show you what's possible, we're working at 1 to 10, but the drawing that we've made, if we were to go back and look at it on the sheet that we've made, at 1 to 10, it's slightly too big for the sheet, as you can see here. The sheet is down here, the drawing is up here. It would make more sense if this drawing was, 1 to 50. But as soon as we make it 1 to 50 again, you can see that a lot of the details we're drawing in there are disappearing because they're not going to print out. There's too much on the sheet. So we need to make a closer call out. We're going to make a call out right of the corner here. So I'm going to go back into section 1, and I'm going to make another call out. View, call out, and I'm just going to make it around this area here. Just this stuff here. And I'm actually going to make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to move this over here like that. So we'll just do it like this. And you can see once again we don't have a drawing number. We haven't put it on a sheet yet, so the drawing number doesn't turn up in here. Let's try and make it all nice and parallel like that. Okay. So now we have call out 2, and we need to rename these as you go through. You would say like corner, or you would say junction detail, roof junction detail, all that kind of stuff. So we can just right click on this and rename to roof junction detail. So you don't sound like a robot when you're doing things. So if I go into the roof junction detail, you can see it hasn't transferred any of the information that we've put into the other section. Let's change that to 1:10. So we need to have a quick way. We don't want to draw it again, so we need to have a quick way of copying it. So I'm going to go back into the call out. I'm going to select everything. And a really nice tool in Revit is this filter tool, because it's difficult sometimes to pick the specific element you want to use in Revit. So you can actually just select everything, press the filter button, and then you can go through and check none. And I want to say I only want to have the detail items, the insulation lines, the lines, and everything else I don't want to select. If I apply that, it's only selected those 2D elements that we've drawn. Once we do that, we can just press this little button up here, copy to clipboard, which is these two tiny pieces of paper up here on the top left. Copy to clipboard. And then if we go into our new roof junction detail, we can press paste, align to the same place, and that'll pop everything right back in exactly the same place for us. But it'll maintain all that stuff around the edges here. Okay. What it doesn't do, it doesn't take that one thing about the view control where I clip the top of the concrete anymore. So we need to do that again. So I'm going to view, cut profile. Going to select the one we want to cut. If we can just, and you're going to have to tab it. There it is. Draw a line from here to here. Accept it, and there we go. So that's back in there again. Now usually the rule with technical drawings is that you first of all you don't have a box around it, so I'm going to switch the box off, which is called crop region visible. I'll switch that off, but I need to put a detail line across anywhere where there's something being cut out of the drawing, so that is also just a component. So I can go into annotate, detail component, load family, detail components, general, and here we have something called a break line. If I insert that, then I can just put a break line. Oh no, it's not insert, it doesn't insert automatically. You need to go back in and actually go component again, detail component. Now, where's break line? There it is there, break line. And we should be able to just insert a break line along the top here, like that. And the nice thing about this break line is we can actually move it up and down, and it'll cut out more of the drawing, or less of the drawing. and you can kind of stretch the amount that you want to have, you know, taken out of the drawing as well. So let's put another one in here. Components. I'm going to put it over here, and you can see in this case it's pointing in the wrong direction. So we just need to rotate it. Like that. We can just move it down. So if you're used to working in AutoCAD or something like this, it's slightly different because you're not drawing. A lot of the stuff you're doing is actually covering up things and, you know, changing things slightly in the model and using the model as a background to do other stuff. But there we have something that looks a little bit. It's like it's starting to turn into something. Now, let's just, while we're here, let's just put in some tiles. I'm going to put in another repeating detail component. And over here I've got some tiles. Let's see what that looks like. No, that's not the tiles I want. So I need to go and insert it. Annotate, component, load family, detail components, masonry. Let's put in some some tiles like that, plain tiles. Whoops, I always forget that. So then we have to go back in and say repeating detail component. I think what I've done, I think I managed to screw this up in the other class, but anyway, let's leave the tiles out for the moment. I won't get into that detail stuff. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you really is, okay, this kind of works, but we need to also make some line, because if you're going to show like a damp-proof course in a detail, it's usually shown as a dark dotted line. That isn't one of the standard lines up here in detail lines. You only get these lines here. So in order to set up a new line type in Revit, you need to go to the Manage tab. Anything to do with overall settings in Revit, they're under the Manage tab. So you can change like the position in the world or the sunlight or all that kind of stuff under Manage, the general parameters of the project and so on. But under additional settings here, we have a couple of things. We've got line weights and line styles. Line weights is basically these numbers correspond to how thick the line is going to be on a printout at these specific scales, if you know what I mean. These are like standard pen sizes. At least they used to be pen sizes. I don't even know if they're pens anymore. When I started first, I was drawing everything in pen and ink. So these were actual pen sizes that you would draw, that you would use. And now you can just assign a line to that specific pen size, okay? And it can change based on the scale of the drawing. So if you have a very, close detail, you don't want to have it full of, just black, huge, big, black, thick lines. So you have to be able to scale those sizes. So you can adjust all that stuff in there. You probably won't need to deal with it very much because it's usually set up quite well. And the other option under additional settings is line styles. And if you just open that up here, these are the styles that are possible in the drawing. So I'm just going to set up a new style called damp-proof membrane, DPM. Okay. So new, going to type DPM. Okay. And we can choose the color of it. Let's say we want it to be, let's just make it red just so it's visible on the screen here, but it's usually black. Let's just make it red. And I'm going to change the type of line to something that's just like a dashed line, like that. And as far as I remember, a 1, it's difficult to tell here. They should really tell you what these thicknesses are on the screen here, but I think a 1 is let's make it a, what is a thick line? Let's make it a 5, because you can see down here wide lines are set to 5. So I'm going to change this to 5 as well. Apply. Okay. So now if I want to draw a DPM in, I just go back to the Annotate tool again, detail line. And I should be able to choose the new line here. I can see it's DPM. So now I can just draw. If I was going to put the DPM in here, like that, and then just take it all the way over here like that. I mean, usually that would be a black dash, but just because you can see it on the screen, it's red. I think it makes more sense. That's kind of it. I mean, everything else to do with detailing up, doing a drawing like this, is contained within all that stuff. The only other thing is stuff like text, where you can set up like a text box with a leader, where you can just say, I want to talk about this, and then you get a chance to, type in tiles and so on, So that's there are just different styles of text leader and so on you can use. Whatever floats your boat in there is what it's worth. Does it make kind of sense? I know it's a lot of stuff to absorb at once, but does it kind of make sense when I'm doing it? Oh, that's right. Good God. All right, I'm going to stop the video there because